Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Silverline Wednesday Wham. We'd like to welcome everyone who's a fan of Silverline and who are always interested in seeing what we have to say. We're here tonight with the illustrious Empress of the Inks, Barbara Kailberg, and possibly some visitors to show up in just a few minutes. We've got some latecomers that like to join a little later. In the meantime, I'd like to remind everyone that we are sponsored by Daytona Beach Comic-Con as well as History Camp from History List, and we always appreciate and thank our sponsors. Tonight we're going to talk about some pop culture current events. I don't know if the viewers are aware, but there's a lot of gossip going around regarding Star Wars, specifically the sequel trilogy and its fate, and possibly being erased by events that may or may not occur on the Mandalorian and or the Ahsoka series. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set the table here. We're going to touch base with how we felt about the sequel trilogy, what worked, what didn't work, and then bring those concepts back to our own creations and how we can avoid the same potential perceived pitfalls when we're creating worlds and characters and so on and so forth. Bar, how do you feel about just in general, just to get started here? I guess I'd let you introduce yourself, and I'll start with myself first. My name is Dean Zachary. You guys probably heard me on previous programs. I've been in the business a long time, since the 90s and the days of Malibu Comics, where I started with things such as The Ferret, which then led to The Nightman, and then other things, including other publishers and more well-known comics. And then the launch of Silverline with Cat and Mouse, #1, which Barb and I worked on together. And now I'm very happy to be with a great independent publisher like Silverline. Barb, why don't you tell the folks your little quick bio?
My name's Barb Kailberg, and like Dean, I've been around since the dawn of dirt. 30 plus years in the industry, and I started at Malibu, and while I was out at Malibu, I also picked up Marvel, DC, Now Innovation. At one time, I was working for 5 companies at once. Warp Graphics, Palyard Press, Dark Horse, Image, IDW. I've worked for just about everybody. And last few years, I have devoted myself pretty much to Silverline. I was in on the ground floor with Dean and Roland when we decided to revitalize Cat and Mouse. And during the course of doing the first issue, we decided, well, let's just start Silverline 3.0. And that's where that started. And now we've got, I don't even know how many people we have. I haven't been able to keep track. And how many books? I've lost track of that too. Even though I'm the CFO, I'm totally lost as how many books we've got going.
We know we've got a big stable going, and
Yeah.
one of those books happens to be an award-winning book in the independent
Oh,
world.
yeah,
You
I
want
heard
to tell
about
us a
that
little bit
one.
about that?
Yes, that's my book, Divinity, and we just had a second Kickstarter for the issue number 2, very successful, and that will be shipping very, very soon. I know they're off the press because I've seen copies of them. That was created, co-written, inked, and colored by moi. And the amazing scripting abilities of R.A. Jones, which scripting is my weak point, and penciled by the amazing Alex Sarabia. It's a wonderful crew, and I couldn't be more proud of the book. It's very, very personal to me. I also I'm inking the issue number 4 of the first 4 issues of Cat and Mouse, which will wrap up this storyline and go to a next storyline. And I am coloring one of the retro books that were black and white graphic novel that we are reintroducing with color now, called Sirens. So my plate is full.
It sounds like it. We've got so much going on here, and want everybody to know that Silverline just keeps growing by leaps and bounds. Palatable. An independent publisher like Silverline allows is what to getting started again with Roland, and the idea that we could take something that even existed before and had a fan base like Cat and Mouse did, and we could enhance it, reboot it, so to speak, but with a healthy respect for what came before. And that segues perfectly into what I want to cover today or tonight, and that is, where did Disney go wrong with the sequel trilogy? I'll stay on this just for.
Oh, Dean, you keep cutting in and out. Hello, don't leave me here by myself. Oh my God. I do not want to be the sole host and guest and everything wrapped into one on this show because I'm terrible by myself. Not that I haven't done it, but I'm just terrible. So, Dean, get back in here. Okay, so we're what we're talking about tonight is Star Wars. We're starting out with Star Wars and talking about where we think this latest trilogy went wrong and where The Mandalorian went right. And I have to agree. I mean, I enjoyed the trilogy. It was entertaining, but I think it relied too much on overused tropes. And to tell you the truth, I thought bringing in Ben as the bad guy was really, really lame. I mean, it was like, oh yeah, of course it is. And guess what's going to happen? Good is going to overcome evil. There were really no surprises to the show. It was entertaining, but it was, hey, he's back.
I'm back.
I'm talking about Star Wars. I said about the movies. I said, it was entertaining, but it was a very overused trope. There were no surprises for me. I thought bringing in Ben as the son of Luke Skywalker and then turning him into the next Darth Vader was kind of lame. It was overused. There were no surprises. We basically knew what was going to happen all along the way. And the crew that they brought in, oh, did he go again? There he is.
I'm back.
You're back again.
Excellent.
And the crew that they brought in, the 3 people that I don't think they had the as much chemistry as they could have. Definitely not like the original trio.
I agree. I agree. Part of it was the chemistry of the leads. Um, Episode 7 is often criticized for being too derivative, and I can see that. There was definitely a template to A New Hope, Episode 4, also known as the original Star Wars. And I think it did suffer from a little bit too much of an echo or tribute, but I was okay with that based on what they seemed to be setting us up for. Obviously, Rey was the new Luke, and Rey was going to go through the maturing process to achieve a level that Luke did, and we were going to supposedly grow with her, and perhaps Luke was now going to be the mentor and take Obi-Wan's place. And the other supporting characters were sort of the I guess the comic relief along with the Han Solo surrogates. So you had kind of okay, it's a little too much like the original. Then I think we really went off the rails with Episode 8, simply because we're introduced to Luke and he seems to be sort of a little too bitter, a little too uninterested in the Jedi. In fact, calling for the Jedi to end, which for fans of the traditional Star Wars is very much like Michael Jordan saying basketball has to end. It's just a little kind of the wrong direction. I understand and have read that the director's intention was to do something that was unexpected. But I think there are certain parameters with a mythological landscape like Star Wars. And that's kind of what I want to relate back to the worlds we're creating. And that is that when you create a mythological foundation and a landscape with worlds and characters, and you build a fan base over multiple decades, it's probably a good idea to keep that tone and keep that tradition and not try to defy them by being too clever by half and trying to outsmart everyone's expectations, because you can just outsmart yourself into a very unpopular movie, which I think they did with Episode 8. What was your take on Episode 8? Did you have a similar response, or were you okay with
I
it?
was a little disappointed in Luke's apathy. Overall, the series was entertaining. I mean,
Sure.
there is nobody who does better special effects, in my opinion, than that group of people.
Right.
The special effects were stunning. The cinematography was beautiful. But like I said, there were no surprises for me. I'm like, but this is what's going to happen next.
It happened. There you
This
go.
is what's going to happen next. There it was.
There it goes.
But yeah, I was a little disappointed in my hero. And I saw the original in 1977. I'm sure a lot of people out there have.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in high school, senior year in high school, and it was just so over. It was just something that I'd never seen before, and most people hadn't seen before. It was so magnificent. It pretty much changed the entire way the movie industry did blockbusters.
I agree. It brought science fiction out of the colder tone that it had previous to that time, which was mainly Star Trek, and before that, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Science fiction tended to be a little more literary, a little headier, more intellectual, and somewhat cold, and there was less whiz bang fireworks.
And it was a nerd niche. I mean, let's get real. It wasn't a massive general audience type of appeal across the board.
It was. What did you think about the third of the sequel?
Oh, you're gonna have to remind me now. It's been a while. Which one was that one? The last one where we find out where Ben admits his love, and they have this big fight on the ocean, the wreck in the ocean and stuff like that. And of course, as we all knew what would happen, Ben turns to the good side and becomes the hero. and then he dies, because that's what always happens. It was a very Romeo and Juliet type of thing, but
Yeah.
again, no surprises.
Yes. Yes.
I think,
Right.
and you see what Mandalorian. They died. But expanding on characters that we saw in the original series that we want to know more about. And The Mandalorian is a perfect example of that. They just blew that one out of the ballpark. It was just fantastic. And I'm so glad that there's going to be another season of that. And Dean is frozen again. Don't do this to me. Hello, Dean. Still there? You're frozen. All right, people. This is so fun.
Are you guys hearing me at all?
Now we are. Are you hearing us? And he's gone again. Great. This is like dead air. This is what everybody does not want on their show, is dead air. And I need some more guests on here with us. All the latecomers should be showing up any minute. And they're not. Okay, so Mandalorian. Go back to Mandalorian. I thought that the writing was spectacular on that. And of course, it was, oh shoot, the guys that did the Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. What was his name again? The director of that. He just did such a fantastic job. He wrote it and directed it, and everything was just spot on. It grabbed your attention. You got invested in the characters. Everybody fell in love with little Yoda. And here's where Disney dropped the ball on that, is that they did not have their merchandise for Baby Yoda, or whatever his name is. I can't remember it now. But they did not bring out their merchandise for a year after The Mandalorian came out. So there were black market Baby Yodas all over the place, and nobody could stop it, because the need to get your hands on it was so freaking desperate that the people were snatching up right and left. And as far as I'm concerned, Marvel lost a ton of money because they were so slow on their advertising and merchandising on that.
Sorry,
Oh.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
You got me. I'm going to jump on with you for a second, which is completely out of the norm for me. I don't like to be in front of the camera, but that's okay. While we try and figure out what's going on with Dean. But Star Wars is something that I can definitely talk to you about as well.
Yay!
So
Everybody, this is our producer, and he's going to bail me out.
So Guy Ritchie, I think, is who you were talking
Guy
about
Ritchie,
earlier.
yes.
I love Guy Ritchie. He's amazing. His stuff is so good, so good. I've kept up with him since Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and then just followed his career all the way throughout.
The two Sherlock movies that he made with Robert Downey Jr., brilliant. I love them.
They were amazing. They were really good, really good. They didn't get the love they deserved, but I thought they were great. I
know his cinematography is just so spot on.
For sure. Oh, definitely. So I think Dean was talking about, if I'm not mistaken, just kind of where are we talking about sequels, or are we talking about prequels?
Well, we're talking about the latest round that came out. Where it went wrong.
So the pre-sequels are I guess they are considered sequels now. We're at that point. I feel like for me personally, it's a different era of Star Wars, and I see Dean's trying to come back, and so hopefully we can get him back in here in just a minute.
You gotta stay on though.
Yeah, hopefully we can get him there. If not, we may just I may just let y'all switch her back over to I hate to do that now in the middle of the show, but maybe try Zoom again and see if that's working. But hopefully we can get this figured out. But as far as the sequels go, these new ones that just came out, it was a bittersweet moment for me, for sure. One, because as a father, it was really neat to share an experience with my kids.
I'm right there with you.
It was not the same experience that I had when I went to go see I didn't get to see the original trilogy in theaters. I grew up with them, but my generation got to see the prequels in theaters. And so that was amazing. That was really cool. I know everybody gives Phantom Menace, the short end of the stick, but for me, it was a new chapter in Star Wars, and it was really cool. And taking my kids to go and watch that movie was a really neat experience because I saw the same light in their eyes that I had when I went to go see.
I am
the actual
right there
version.
with you. I saw the originals, and I introduced my son to the Star Wars universe when he was 5 years old, and he was completely just swept away. And we saw all of the originals on VHS tapes, and then when they started up in the theaters again, they re-showed, they reformatted it and added some little extras, and they brought them back out on the big screen again. So we went again, and it became a mother-son tradition to see every single Star Wars that came out from then on. And even after he left for the military, he would say, "You got to wait until I get back." He would be on deployment. You got to wait till I get back and to see the latest movie. And then he got married, and I'm like, oh, well, he's going to start taking his wife now, but because we always made a date to do this. But it became a threesome then. He would take his wife and me to the Star Wars. It was always, this is our thing.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
He definitely has his ideas on it too. And if you say you're a Jar Jar Binks fan, I'm going to have to leave the room.
No, I will say that the gun, even just the dialect, the talk, all of that stuff just kind of threw me. I wasn't a huge fan of it. No, the pod racing was awesome though. I loved the pod racing.
That was definitely a throwback to Luke and
yes.
his desert rat racing.
I did love how they did that. That was fantastic, I thought.
What criticisms do you have against the last trilogy?
So against the last trilogy, I will say I felt there were a lot of gaps. There were some things that they teased us with, and then they just kind of pulled it back. Kind of like the relationship between Finn and Rey. I feel like there was something building up there, even to the point where Finn was able to wield the lightsaber and did a pretty decent job with it at first. I thought that we were going to see some force powers kind of come from him, and then I did feel like he kind of got pushed to the side as Rey's story really began to progress, and even Poe Dameron kind of came to the forefront as well as the pilot.
And he was definitely our Han Solo.
Definitely. And I appreciated that. I'm glad that we were able to fill that role with somebody. It was good to see. I
would have liked to have seen more of him. And if they continue that, I would love to see his story.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a really cool spinoff to see how he did with his squad and seeing them kind of fly through the stars and do some really cool things with their X-Wings.
How he got involved in all of this, how he got brought in, what his backstory is, and where he goes from there, from after the movie. I think it could be as good as Mandalorian, if they would develop his character. And he was the only Latina character that they've had. And I thought that was great. I would like to see more of him.
I would too.
Not to mention he was very good looking. So
not too hard to look at. Yeah, he was pretty easy on the eyes. I can see that. I think the relationship with Ben and Rey also kind of came out of left field. I knew something was going in there. I didn't know what was going on with it. I didn't feel any intimacy, that's for sure. So I don't know, like when the kiss happened at the end of the last, the last episode, the last show. I don't know how I felt about it. I'm still a little weird. I don't know. I'm still a little. I'm still processing that, I guess you can say.
It seemed a little contrived.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Like everybody was expecting it, so of course, here's your reward for waiting so long. Here's the kiss that you guys have been screaming about.
You think so? I guess maybe it was like so hardwired into the story that maybe I was hoping for not to become a thing.
Yeah, and I'm saying it was fan service.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. And you've got to have a little bit of that in Star Wars. Star Wars really is. I mean, it's made its entire business. It's made its entire industry off of fan service, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, as volatile as that has become, I think it's also done really well for creating an empire, in television and just anything that is consumable, really.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest shocker that they threw at us was Solo's death. That was, for me, I was like, I was kind of half expecting it, but I was like hoping that they didn't do that because, obviously Leia's gone, and I wanted to hang on to at least 2/3 of the old crew, but that didn't happen. So what we're left with? Well, then we have none of them. Every single one of them went. I was like, ah.
You're right. Yep, all of them did.
Except for Chewbacca.
Except for Chewbacca, he is our lasting hero. I feel so. I grew up with the stories of Harrison Ford saying that he wanted to leave early on. He wanted his character to die off. I heard those rumors as I was growing up, being a big fan of Star Wars. And then, of course, hearing about, George Lucas not wanting to kill off a main character because then you can't sell toys, right? That's the story that I grew up with. So I guess I saw Han Solo leaving. I guess I saw his departure. I didn't see it maybe in the first one because I like you, I was very happy to see his return in the sequel trilogy. And of course, I was really hoping that he would last a little bit longer.
Yeah,
I was expecting
just a little bit longer.
Yes, definitely.
And I realize, he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but then, why is he doing another Indiana Jones? I don't know.
Y'all talked about that last time. I enjoyed that conversation.
Yes. Random walkers. Anyway, but yeah, I was still sad to see him go because, come on, it's Han Solo.
Right. Yes. And he is definitely, out of all of the ships that are in Star Wars, I think the Millennium Falcon is probably the most recognizable.
Oh, absolutely. And
you can't really have the Millennium Falcon without its pilot. To me, I don't know. The two kind of really go together. Sure, Rey, can fly it. I don't know that it belonged to her. I didn't feel like she had really earned it, though, by the end of the movies. Yeah,
well, hopefully Chewbacca will go along with the Millennium Falcon, so at least there's some of the old crew that's still with it, Yeah, and he's a good pilot too himself.
He is. He learned from the best. So.
So, have you seen The Mandalorian?
I have seen The Mandalorian. I was right there from the beginning and watching every episode as soon as they came out.
And where do you think it went wrong or right?
Oh, that's interesting. I do not see any major problems with The Mandalorian. I think it's mostly right. I think they did an excellent job in creating of the world without focusing too much on Force wielders.
I thought they did a great job world building the whole mythology behind the Mandalorians. The whole culture and everything. They did a great job of building that world.
Yes.
And and you become really, really invested in these two characters, the Baby Yoda. What is his name?
Grogu.
Grogu. That's it.
Grogu.
I keep wanting to say Grohl. It's Grogu. You can become so invested in Grogu and Mando, and that is exactly what you want in a show. That is the sweet spot. You know, is for your audience to be so invested in these characters that they can't wait for the next episode.
I agree completely, and I think that goes back to what you guys do at Silverline as far as writing your stories and being able to create issue after issue after issue that revolves around those characters, and being able to develop relationships with those characters as an audience member, as somebody who consumes comics. I love that y'all do that, and y'all continue to put out stuff for me to consume. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and that is the
You're
ideal.
welcome.
That is the ideal that we strive for, is that every issue that you read, you fall a little bit deeper into the story, and then when the issue ends, you're like, no, it can't end now. What happens next? That's the perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The
Can go
pinnacle
buy the
of
next
what
one.
Mm-hmm.
Go buy the next one. Yeah, I do think that the Mandalorian did a great job of creating of focusing in on those two characters. And we learned early on that Grogu is a Force wielder. And like I said before, I enjoy the fact that they were able to build a world that didn't focus on Jedi, that didn't focus on the light and the dark side. And even with that little piece of the puzzle, once you learn that, it doesn't take away from their story. You're not like, okay, here we go again. We're going to go into, is he going to go light? Is he going to go dark? Is that really the importance of the story? And the entirety of the story didn't focus on that. And I think they did an excellent job on allowing us to see that there's so much more in this galaxy other than just Empire and Rebels, and I loved it. I love it.
Are you there now, Dean?
I'm back.
Are you back?
Not sure what the technical difficulties were, but can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes,
we can hear you. Are you in your basement?
Good.
Maybe you don't have a good signal.
Good. In the basement studio, I guess that may be part of it, even though I am hardwired. But what I heard what you guys said about Mando. I think Mando does a terrific job. It seems to capture the flavor and the tradition of the original Star Wars trilogy. People are responding to that. They're responding in such numbers that it seems like Favreau and Filoni are heading toward a more traditional Skywalker-centric world, along with their exploration of Mando, Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. There are rumors that Sebastian Stan has been cast as a middle-aged Luke Skywalker.
Seriously?
Just after Episode 6, yes. There's also rumors that Mark Hamill has also re-signed after saying never, never, never again, has re-signed, and that Lucas himself is going to have more input on the series from here on out. And I think the direction I wanted to address was that part of the problem with the approach to the sequel trilogy, as you guys observed so accurately, was that it was almost like they took the template of the original story and just plugged in characters that they thought would be appealing to the new demographic, a younger crowd, when really it's more about the story. It really is. It's the characters and the story together. It's the tone. Star Wars has a mythological backdrop, which is, good and evil fighting it out, and these Jedi Knights and what their discipline and struggle is to reach a level of proficiency that Luke reached. We didn't really get the feel that Rey had to go through as much of a struggle as Luke did. I mean, Luke lost a hand, he got thrown down a chute, he almost died, he was tempted with revenge against his own father, and then showed extreme compassion, virtue, and restraint by not taking out that revenge. So we saw this angry little whiny kid grow from angry teen to mature knight through the story. We didn't have that growth with Rey as much. I know they tried, but it just didn't ring true. What we're seeing with Mando is a redemption story, I think. Someone who is paid to do nefarious, somewhat nefarious, on the edge jobs, and then he becomes a
Without
protector
asking
for this.
questions.
Yes, becomes a protector for this innocent child. That's a great redemptive story. I think it really is about tone and tradition. And for me, that was the approach I wanted to take with Cat and Mouse. It was about tone and tradition. Street fighting kids in a difficult situation, having to draw on their inner strength and their moral compass to fight human traffickers, even though, how do we do this when we're outnumbered, outgunned? And I think we kept that with Cat and Mouse. How do you feel about that, Barb? You feel like we kept it?
Yeah, I really like where Brett is coming from. I mean, he's a little naive, and Bobby is a little jaded, and they kind of meet in the middle, where Brett will bring his ideology, his love of the law uh, into it, while she will bring her street smarts and her cynicism into it, and I think it's a good mix of characters. Now, for Divinity, we don't have any kind of a redemption arc, but we have two hardened soldiers who've, they've seen it all in Afghanistan, and they're hard and they're cruel. They can be deadly and cold. And then they've got this child, who symbolizes everything that's good in the world. And they somehow need to become a family and learn to love each other, and protect each other while they're navigating all the cruelties of the world. And along the way, that we're going to meet other people who are good people who are going to be changed by it too. So it's going to be a big dichotomy of virtue and innocence versus cynicism and hate.
I agree. I love the idea of Divinity being that symbol of everything that's good and the innocence of youth, and the fact that she's supremely gifted and arguably the most powerful being in the storyline, and but with the immaturity of her age and having to deal with that because again, your readers, both young and old, can relate to that. I remember being a teenager and thinking, wait, I'm having to take on all these new responsibilities, but I kind of like just being a kid. But how do you walk through that door completely from everything being taken care of to, oh my gosh, this is all on my shoulders now? And you're not really emotionally ready for that weight. And it's going to be interesting to see how Ari Jones and you being the story the story runner, figure out how to bring Divinity into this adult world with all the pitfalls and dangers she has to face. And that's the exciting thing about it, is there's no, you can attest to this, but I love reiterating this for the audience. There's no overbearing editorial narrative to be fulfilled here. Nobody's telling you, hey, Barb, we got to sell toys, so we got to do this. You got to bring in a sidekick. Can you bring in like a little robot or something? Maybe we can sell some toys. Yeah. No, nobody's bugging you like that. They're just like, go with it. Tell us the story you want to tell. That's refreshing to me.
Sorry, I had a light above me.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying that's very refreshing, and the excitement that awaits the people who are, the audience. I can wait to read number 2. I haven't gotten my number 2. I'm waiting for it, but I know they're going to ship out soon. But the fact that we're going to get to see her grow, we're going to see her mature. That's going to be fun to watch, and to see how the family, as you so accurately called it, how they gel and how they unify under the stress of their common enemies in a very dangerous world.
Do you remember how old you were when you were first really came smack up against the cold reality of the world, really scary cold reality of the world? Do you have any
Yeah.
stories?
And summers became long, hot summers of mowing lawns and, you know, then working at his convenience store in my spare time, and really just learning that you have to earn your way. And I remember working at the convenience store, and I was so overwhelmed because I had a delivery on the truck. I can't remember what soft drink truck was coming in. I had to count in all the inventory. I had a rush of customers, and I had to make change, and people lined up, and I was a teenager. And I remember just sort of locking up for a moment and just thinking in that moment, like, I can't do this. How am I going to do this? How am I going to take care of the guy? I've got to sign a change. I got to think this through. I've got a line of people out the door. People are getting annoyed, looking at their watch, getting angry at me. And it just hit me like, wow, this adulting thing is not easy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously being faced with mortality, and when grandpa died, you know, that kind of thing where you realize, hey, all this nice, warm and fuzzy around me at holidays, it's not going to always be like this. You know, things like that. Seeing one of your relatives, you know, in that
Yeah.
situation, and seeing the grief and everything. So yeah, growing past that and realizing, hey, you know, life is a lot of struggle. What helped was having a great family, a great mom and dad, and sort of foundation. You know, that's why family is so important. And I like the fact that you want to focus on that with divinity.
Yeah.
What about you? What hit you? How did it come
Oh,
crashing down?
well, when I'm picturing divinity and she comes smack up against what the real life can be like, the harsh realities when her parents are killed. I was raised on a farm, so hard work was something that was every day for me. But it was a really idyllic life. Okay, so raised on a farm in Iowa, very small town, um, and everybody knew everybody, and your kids ran around. All the kids ran around with everybody else. Very much a very pastoral type of life. And then when I was about 11, I was on the bus, following another bus after school, and we stopped to let one of the kids off, a little 5-year-old, and one of my friends walked the little 5-year-old across the highway to get her there safely. And on the way back, she was hit by a car, and in front of two
Oh,
busloads of kids. Yeah, and her body was flung like 40 feet in the air and then came back down. He hit her like at 70 miles an hour. And
oh God.
it didn't register for the longest time. All the ambulances came, and the bus driver got out and put her coat over Rita and all this stuff. And it just, wasn't registering. And so once everybody was gone, and the bus route went back to taking everybody home, pulls up to my farm, and I go to get off, and I ask the bus driver, I says, so is Rita going to be okay? And she says,
Mm-hmm.
no, honey, Rita's dead. And that was the moment. That was the
Yep.
moment when reality and real life intruded on my idyllic little childhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
Um,
can see that, and the foundation of that anchor, that weight,
mhm.
is definitely relevant, excuse me, in the divinity story. And I think that's why it resonates so well. I think that's why I got into it right away. Like you said, R.A. script is just right on. He's got the voices of all your characters down, and I'm sure a lot of that is because of how you communicated it to him. And
Oh yeah, he doesn't have kids of his own, so yeah, I kind of have to police the kid.
he does a terrific job with it. The challenge in creating any world that has fantasy elements. Silver Blade is a Victorian thriller. The book I'm working on for people who haven't heard, and
Research,
it concerns
research.
two secret societies. Yeah, a lot of research, but the core storyline really is why is it important for people to be virtuous? Why can't they just do what they want and be cynical and do what's convenient and opportunistic? And the results of one secret society that believes that cynical way, and the other one who is completely on the other side, a secret society of noble knights who try to uphold the highest levels of virtue. Of course, they're human beings too, so they're just as flawed. But
Kind of like the
the
Crusades.
yes, the idea is that what elevates us above just survival? What makes a person good and evil? And obviously, in my storyline, it's the choices that we make, and then the ramifications of those choices. And what I try to illustrate when the mentors are training the younger initiates into the Order of Sacred Silver is that, defend the innocent, destroy evil. That's your purpose. And
Kind of sounds like the martial arts philosophy too.
yes, a lot of that was brought in. A lot of the idea of, you're being given these special skills, but you have a responsibility along with them. The old Spider-Man idea as well. With great power comes
great responsibility. Yeah.
right. And so the idea is, because I grew up a Boy Scout, and having to learn the Boy Scout law, we were taught to be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
Wow, you remembered all.
I do indeed.
I was a Girl Scout. I still have my sash.
Yeah, and I remember that, and it has carried me through a lot in my life, and a lot of good and bad. And I think that it would really help for me to share that code of virtue as much as I can in my stories, because after all, I like telling stories with clear heroes and clear villains. And I think that was part of the appeal of the original Star Wars, was that, and the fact that, what does it really mean to be a good guy? What does that really mean? Does it mean you're perfect? No, it means you're trying to live up to a perfect ideal. And I think it's still important to encourage that. And that's really what Silverblade's all about, with all the trappings and the Victorian tone and the cool sword fights, and answering the question of, why does silver defeat evil, which I always tease that, but that is going to be explained in the story in a way that I don't think has ever been done before. And the idea of how do we live in a fallen, cynical world and retain that humanity and compassion and virtue? How do you remain a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, when faced with a culture that oftentimes looks at us as being just kind of silly Pollyannas, like, oh, come on, guys, nobody believes in that stuff anymore. Just get real, Well, I do.
And that throws back to Star Wars again, and that Star Wars has been called a space
opera,
or a cowboy, in space.
Yeah.
Because you have the white hats and you have the black hats.
Right.
And we're throwing back to the old westerns of yore, where we had, Dale and Roy and Trigger and the heroes in the white hats rescuing the damsel in distress.
But now we have damsels surprising everyone and doing their own rescuing, and so it's even more fun, because you can take the old cliches and sort of turn them upside down and put them through a modern lens, and everyone can tell the story that they want to tell. The lesson for me with Disney's stumble, in my opinion, with the sequels is stick to the mythological world that everyone was drawn to. If it was a space western, let's leave it a space western with Boy Scouts fighting bad guys. And I think I think they're getting there, and I think they're still doing that. And I think that as creators, again, Silverline provides us with a playing field like I've never had this before. There were editorial controls, and you've discussed them with us before.
Oh yeah.
Where you couldn't just do whatever whenever you were let's see, herded in, you were corralled, and you were told, this is the way it's done. The problem becomes, I think, that we're always walking a line between, we're in a commercial art form, so we have to make it appealing. But I have come to a level of peace with how I do that. And I always say, creation is beyond calculation. And the reason I say that, it's not just a silly phrase I throw out, even though some people might think it's silly. It actually, what it means is, once you start calculating, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Correct.
Because you're no longer being true to your creative and artistic instincts. You're saying, are the kids going to like this? Should his cape be yellow?
Is it going to appeal to the audience of 18 to 35-year-olds? Can we do a study to see
Right.
a focus group? Is it going to go over with our shareholders?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yes. We can't stray too far this way because it's going to offend this group. And we can't stray too far that way because it's going to offend this other group. We have to make money. So we have this specific little box that we have to fit in order to satisfy the shareholders on this side, the fans on this side, the possible movie rights on this side. That's what happens when you get into a platform like DC and Marvel, is you have too many cooks in the kitchen, and they all demanding their fair share.
Now, that brings me to a question, and again, this is tangent to what we're discussing, but it may enlighten us and take us down another rabbit hole that would be kind of fun. How in the world does Chris Nolan, who's only done like Memento and a couple of arguably art house boutique movies, get tapped by Warner to do the Dark Knight trilogy, which by any stretch was way outside that box you just described for Batman, their flagship commercial franchise, and they let Chris do his version of it. And the fact that he pulled off 3 films, totally realistic, one of them just breaking all box office records with Dark Knight, probably because of the death of Heath Ledger after playing the Joker. But the scripts are very realistic and fantastic. Here's this franchise character, and Chris is given the free rein to go realistic, dark, and it works. And everyone's screaming about, oh my gosh, this elevates the genre, right? Where were all the suits walking about, hey, we can't sell toys with this kind of stuff. This is too dark. I mean, Dark Knight is R-rated, right?
Well, and this is my theory on that. How many times has Batman been done before Chris got his hands on it? Okay. Every single one of them tried to conform to a fairly standard DC motto, try to fit into the mold that DC had set to varying degrees of success. Okay. And people were getting, another Batman movie,
Mm-hmm.
And then Chris comes along and says, let me stir things up. What have you got to lose? I mean, we've done this to death in the books, in the movies. Batman has been done to death for 40, 50, how many years now?
70.
70, sorry,
Yeah.
showing my age. For 70 years now, it's just a rehash of a rehash of a rehash. I mean, there's only so many stories that you can tell within the prescribed mold of Batman. So why don't you give it to me and let me stir the pot and see what happens? And that's my theory. That's what I think happened, because I mean, it's been done to death. So is Superman. You know?
I agree. And what we saw was so encouraging in many ways. The artist in me was a little bit disappointed that we didn't have huge statues and fins on the Batmobile and all the cool artsy stuff that I'd been drawing, for a decade at the time, or a decade and a half. But the creator in me was thrilled at the weight and the depth and the elevation of the genre from just going through the motions of yet another costume superhero beating up criminals to getting deeper into the psychology of fighting crime as a costume vigilante and what would that do to a real life city. And so in the first movie, you get the origin. Okay, a lot of people are like, it's the origin again, but they knew there was a different tone. By the time we get to Dark Knight, we're seeing literally a mob movie. I mean, that is a crime thriller that happens to have Batman in it. I mean, it's a mob story. And then by the time we get to Bane in the third movie, it's a disaster movie. It's, nuclear weapon, bring down the city, blow up the football game with the stadium full of people. It was epic. And I think what we can learn as Silverline creators from that is, why did it work? Because he broke from what was done before. It worked because the important thing, the most important connection, was the respect for the traditional content, the respect for the character, the respect for the world, the respect for what had come before. It wasn't just redressing it in new costumes and sets. It was giving it more depth and resonance, but respecting the origins. We still got a Batmobile, even though it was brought down to a realistic core. We still got a bat suit with a cape and ears, but it was brought down to a practical core of body armor. We still got the bat symbol. We still got, in the third movie, you still got Catwoman, for crying out loud. They figured out how to do a Catwoman hat and make it work by having her visor go up and the little points make cat ears. So the clever sort of sleight of hand to keep all of the visual cues and yet give it the resonance and depth of a modern crime thriller, just everybody loved it. And arguably that's still the high point.
It made it more believable, for one thing. And I'm a huge proponent of looking at say comic books or stories and stuff like that and saying, how would this actually work in real life?
Right.
Because we're all called upon to exercise our suspension of disbelief when watching fantasies or superhero movies or even, oh God forbid, those car movies.
Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious. Oh.
Yeah.
First couple of them were great, but man, oh man! I mean, you get to by the
how
time
many can we do now? Come on.
Yeah, and your suspension of disbelief has been stretched so taut that you know it's going to snap. And some suspension of disbelief is necessary, even with the realistic Batman movies, but it's so much less that you are caught up into it, and you're kind of subconsciously saying, that could happen.
Yeah.
I can actually see that.
I can see that. Yeah. And the tone is still Batman, and yet having to mix it up with so much realistic law enforcement
It brings it down to your level.
Yeah, absolutely. And
We can relate.
we can relate. And that's the challenge when we create our worlds. Like I was saying earlier, you and RA have done that to a great success with Divinity. And I'm working on my script now to give it that weight, even though we're going to be in a much more fantastic environment. I want to give the resonance to the philosophical underpinnings of my story. I'll give you an example. In the first 3 pages of the story, a young person dies in the arms of one of the heroic characters. And as the young person is dying in this modern knight's arms, the young person who's struggling with faith says, why does God let bad things happen to good people?
Oh boy, that's an age-old question.
So
Yeah.
you're going to get the idea in my script from the get-go that I'm not playing around with lightweight stuff here. I'm going to actually go into that and try to answer it through the struggles of these characters, of these knights who are trying to rise above their flawed humanity and be better and do better and be different from the human traffickers that they're fighting. And with the occasional help of divine energy, very much in the limited use that we saw in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where, here we have a, two-fisted globe-trotting archaeologist who's afraid of snakes, right? And you didn't expect, though, that a divine power was going to take out the Nazis at the end, right? But you got it. But you were so lulled into accepting a level of magic that by the time you get there, you're
Face
like,
melting.
yes. You're cheering it on. You're like, yes, take these Nazis out. This is awesome.
I'm all just get out.
I know. And so that's kind of the tone I'm going for, is that, everyone who knows me very well knows that's my favorite movie. And so I wanted that tone. I wanted to capture the sort of rollicking adventure and the flawed humanity of our leading character, but at the same time, throw in a little bit of divine magic every now and then to let you know, hey, wow, in this world, we see some cool fireworks too. Just like in, I think in Mando, how long before we saw Jedi magic? I mean, it was a while,
We saw little hints. We saw little hints of it from Grogu, who would do little tiny things.
Mm-hmm.
When he wasn't eating everything in sight.
Yeah. And I think that's what brought us into Mando's journey was, okay, here's the man with no name shooting up everybody, ruthless, but he just can't bring himself to turn a child, even an alien child like this, over to this nefarious cabal. So he's going to become the child's protector. Those fans of Lone Wolf and Cub know that's a template there, and it works very well.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea works so well and so appealing because what we have now is an opportunity for redemption of Mando. Like, he's been that guy. Maybe he doesn't want to be that guy anymore. And then you brought up the idea of the Mandalorian world and their traditions, be it a throwback to the Native American traditions. That's kind of what it feels like, sort of a Viking blend with Native Americans.
This is the way.
Yeah, this is the way. And whatever that is, it's a great backdrop. So again, world building, respect for the origins of where these characters evolved from, and the mythological underpinnings of, in Star Wars case, and in the case of my story, broad definitions of good and evil. There's not much gray in the mythological stories that I like to tell. And again, when I discuss these things, I want everyone to know too that I'm not saying this as this is the way it should always be. And I'm saying everyone's ideas are welcome. If you want to do a story that's all gray, do a story that's all gray. I'm saying be true to the world you create, and be true to your own instincts and creative intuition, and don't ever calculate. I think the Todd McFarlane example is the best. The most impossible costume, and still everyone loves Spawn, right? I mean, what? Chains all floating around? What? That giant cape? I mean, it's the size of, a train. What? How does that work in real life?
Artemis, who's got an 8-foot long ponytail.
It's like, how is that? But it doesn't matter. It's true to Todd's world. There's a resonance there. It's true to his instincts. It's true to the background. I think it should encourage everyone, especially now that we're in a world where we're not bound by the 2 boxes of the big 2 publishers. We can go anywhere we want. Everyone is welcome at Silverline. Once you reach a certain level of professionalism and within the PG-13 parameters, we have room for a fantasy, action, adventure, mystery, thriller, horror,
children's book,
comedy, children's book.
Got a couple of those.
Yes, all of the romance. Even I don't know if anyone's doing that yet, but anything can be done here, and to me, that's the great excitement of it. If you were to say, like, when you were creating are you doing a 4-issue arc with Divinity or a 6?
4-issue to begin with. It leaves it on a cliffhanger. Well, not a cliffhanger, but and what happens next type of thing.
Okay.
It resolves the first part of a story, but of course it leaves the entire overarching thing wide open so that you can keep going.
Sure. When you were mapping it out, did you build the world first, build it as you go? And then a secondary question, when you wrote out the outline or plot or however you did it, did you know when you started where it was going to end?
No, I don't. I don't know where it's going to end. I know where I want to go, but I don't know the end of the journey. I'm figuring that out as I go. But I mean, we were only 2 issues in, and we've got the first 4 issues completely scripted. So we resolved the first little arc, but it leaves it wide open to continue. And I don't know what the end of the road is. And there's a couple of questions that people have asked me, that I can't answer yet. Like, how powerful will she become? I don't know yet. Because she's just beginning on her journey. So she's got a long ways to go. And I guess we're going to find out as we travel the journey together. As far as the characters and who they are, yeah, I had all of that. And I had 2 things going for me for this. Number 1, I've been a mother to a girl. And number 2, I'm also a mother to a soldier. I've had a lot of vets in my family, and my son's a master sergeant, and he's 17 years into his 20-year tenure, and so I get to pick up a lot of the mindset of soldiers, and also a lot of the opposite side, the worry and the fear and the terror and trying to speak in code when you're not allowed to tell what's going on when you're on the other side of the world. It's an entirely different world. So I bring 2 perspectives to the story, and I'm a horrible script writer. Not horrible, because I am learning and I've done it before, but I don't have confidence in my script writing. So I needed R.A., who is a master of it. Only R.A.'s never had any children, and he doesn't have any military experience. So I bring that to it. So we really, really do make a good team, although he's been reading a lot of books. But I comb over the scripts and I'll say, well, this needs to be a sniper rifle, blah, 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 because you can't shoot long range with an Uzi, RJ. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
So oddly enough, I am the one bringing the technical expertise to the book, and my father's a gun collector too, by the way. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it's a little bit of role reversal here, where the woman is bringing the expertise, but I also bring the mothering, and he brings all the amazing. He puts it all together. I just dump all this in his lap, and he just makes gold. He spins gold out of this straw that I dump in his lap. So
Well, it seems to be working. The way I work is I write a rough plot. I know where every page begins and ends. I know where every book begins and ends, and I have to decide the destination. But the fun comes in how it unfolds, and developing the characters as they interact, and putting the heroes through the most difficult events that I can, and testing their mettle, so to speak, and finding out what they're made of. I know where they have to go, but I want to make sure that the archetypes are all touched on. I want a more innocent character, a jaded character, a wise old character, one that's in his prime. I want the female character not to be stereotypical, and it's difficult in some
that's a
ways to write.
hard line to walk.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of input from others on that. A woman in a Victorian era who wants to be an archaeologist. It's one thing to be Lara Croft Tomb Raider in our current contemporary day, but if you want to be Lara Croft Tomb Raider in 1892, it's going to be a little bit different. So
She might have to disguise herself as a man from time to time.
well, she definitely has resources, which helps. Independent wealth due to her father being, super wealthy and having run around the world with another globetrotting literary character named Alan Quatermain. So,
Oh,
yeah, we have some guest appearances from some literary people in this. So, Dr. Van Helsing is in it as well. Again, I'm tying together the idea of silver defeating evil. So I'm even bringing in peripheral characters from Dracula and Frankenstein's experiments to give us the idea that a lot of these secret societies have been around for a very long time, and they touch upon a lot of the classic myths. But as far as Elizabeth Dane, Elizabeth is going to be the window pretty much through which we have the adventure. She resents the Order of Knights because she blames this idealistic group of crusaders for her father's disappearance and presumed death. At the same time, she's fascinated by what they do and what they know. And as she becomes more involved with their artifacts and their subterranean museums and their arcane rituals and all of the things that she discovers and the evil that they're fighting, she definitely wants to be a part of it, as does the American cavalry officer who is there in London for his own reasons. His family members were affected by this evil cult, and he's there to track down what happened to them. So all these characters are brought together, and there's a feeling of again, real white hats versus black hats. That's definitely there, but it's a story about struggle with faith as well, because as we know, when bad things happen, we ask that question if we have a faith-based foundation, and I wanted to address that as well in my book, and I wanted to also talk about the relationships of people in those days, regardless of the strong, overbearing Victorian insistence that this group did this, men did this, and women did this, and that's the end of it, and how people really are, regardless of that, and how much like you described yourself and RA, it really breaks down to who's better at what in the end. And there's no shame or humiliation in admitting that, this person's better at this than I am, so I'm going to let them do this. I'm better at this, and so on. I can tell you right now from my own experience, my wife is infinitely better at navigating the bureaucratic paperwork of insurance companies than I am. So when it comes to those types of issues, I let her sort of navigate through the paperwork. She understands bureau speak better than I do. So, and there's, again, it's that understanding of a family, and I'm going to bring that to the story as well, as these characters experience these awful situations and horrific adventures and soaring adventures at times. They're going to learn to depend on each other and to break down the stereotypes, the unfair expectations that are put on people, and be human beings. And hopefully that's the window that people will experience the story in. I hope it's exciting and fun, and it's an adventure. I'm right now having a lot of fun doing covers for people. I had a great time doing a cover for Divinity. Hopefully I can.
Oh no.
Another one of our books that I hope everyone is looking at. Working on one for Shadow Ghost right now, and my own covers, of course. But I'm just excited by the stable of what Silverline is offering. Couldn't be happier with the company, that I'm working with now.
Here's a question for you. We're going to go back to Star Wars a bit.
Yeah.
If you had a choice to do your own Star Wars based program like The Mandalorian, what characters would you choose to focus on?
Wow. Okay, really easy. I would choose to pick up the story right after Return of the Jedi, where Luke has accomplished the goal of confronting his father, and defeating the anger and desire for revenge in himself by showing mercy, and then watching his father kill the Emperor and the Empire being partially destroyed, but we all know that there would be warlords and military leaders vying for control in the aftermath of Return of the Jedi. And I would pick it up where Luke assumes he's the last of the Jedi, but it's time to rebuild. And I would send him on his first quest as a newly minted Jedi Knight to seek out the Jedi Temple and learn everything he can and find out what he's supposed to do. And I would put the huge bounty on his head and have Boba Fett and a number of bounty hunters after him, because he would have a bigger amount on his head than Han Solo ever thought about having after what he did to the Emperor. And I would want to tell that story. It'd be episode 6.1, I guess. So
Right. So if you had to choose other characters besides our main 3 or 4, if you count Chewbacca, whose story would you want to tell? A side character.
A side character.
Like they did with Mando.
Like they did with Mando. Okay. Let's go back to. Let me think for a moment. It's with me, it's a Skywalker story, but if you had to push me into that, I would say let's tell the story of someone in Vader's life. Okay. What about? Well, we covered everything in the prequels. What about
Wait, you don't want to tell the
I
backstory
don't
of Jar
see
Jar
anyone
Binks?
really there. No, thank you. No. I really want to stay Skywalker centric, I think, because that's the spine of it to me. The Mando story is good. I like that. I think maybe Darth Maul
There you go. That would be interesting.
might be interesting. What brought Darth Maul to where he is? Was he always choosing the dark side? What turned him? He's arguably one of the more popular villains in the series, but we don't know. Now, I'm sure people are going to say, well, Dean, there's tons of backstory on him. You just haven't, gone down the rabbit hole far enough. And there probably is. But it might be fun to see him as a young, whatever he is, alien. And what took him in that direction to be what he is? Did he have a chance to choose another way? And what made him choose that? That might be fun. Trying to think about characters in Jedi, the Return of the Jedi, that might be interesting too. I like a peripheral character that hasn't been addressed in live action so far, and that's Mara Jade, who's part of the extended universe.
I've heard a
Mara
lot
Jade
about
was
Mara
known
Jade.
as.
Yeah. Wasn't she supposedly?
She is known as the Emperor.
Could have been like the lover of Luke Skywalker, maybe.
Yes.
Wasn't she rumored to be?
She is rumored to be in the first spin-off novelization before we got the prequels by Timothy Zahn.
Mm-hmm.
He created a very interesting story that told us what happened to Luke a few years after Jedi and his entanglement with Mara Jade and love affair and children that came from that union. And I've always thought that it may have been a mistake for Disney to try to avoid that, obviously, most likely, so they wouldn't have to pay Timothy Zahn too much money. But he did a terrific job of spinning off those characters. One, it would be Mara Jade, because how did she meet Luke? How did their relationship unfold? As we know from the prequels, the Jedi are supposed to be detached from romantic relationships, but being human beings, they're going to have romantic relationships. So how did that happen? And did they have children? And what happened to those kids? So that might be another realm. But that, as far as a character outside of the Skywalker saga, I think Mara Jade would be my pick. And just as a side note, there are also rumors that she has been cast.
Oh, well. Really?
So, yeah.
I think if I had to pick,
Yeah.
I have two. I would want to see
Okay.
a series around Poe, because I found him
Okay.
fascinating. He's a little bit exotic. He's a very Han Solo-ish. He's swashbuckling and dashing. And we lost Dean again. And the other one I think I would like to see would be Qui-Gon Jinn. Is that how? Qui-Gon? Yeah. Liam Neeson's character. I think I would like to see his backstory on how he became a Jedi Master. Okay. You know what? Are you going to come back on?
I don't know how we lost him. Again, we were doing great. I don't know what happened. He went from being on to nothing. So hopefully he comes back on in a second. I like Qui-Gon Jinn though. Oh, here he is.
Yep. Go. I want to hear your opinion.
As far as who I would make characters.
Qui-Gon. Yeah, you said you liked Qui-Gon?
Qui-Gon Jinn, yeah, for sure. He was a lovable character from the start in the prequels, and I think there is definitely a lot of audience out there that would love to see a story based around him. So,
good call, Qui-Gon Jinn. Excellent call.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see one of those. I mean, if you actually look at the original trilogy, I mean, how much did they ever even discuss or touch on the Mandalorians?
They really didn't.
They mentioned them.
The Mandalorians were responsible for Boba Fett's armor. We knew that's about all we knew about the Mandalorians. I have a friend who's obsessed with Bothans, and he's like, when Mon Mothma says many Bothans died to get us this information, it's like he's like, I want to see the Bothans. I want to see what they did to get this information.
That's an absolutely fantastic idea,
right?
Right? Because
I mean
look what they built out of a throwaway bit. The Mandalorians built their armor. Okay, who's the Mandalorians? Well, here's their whole world.
Here's their whole deal. I mean, so there's so many little things you grab onto. There's another little known character from the prequels named Aura Singh. Okay, and she is one of the odd-looking females that's watching the pod race.
Mm-hmm.
And you may recognize her if you look her up on the internet. You may not, but she supposedly got an interesting story. Ahsoka has a fantastic story. She's being explored, I think, very well. That world just keeps getting richer and richer, and the stories that seem to be resonating and attracting an audience the most are the ones that really have a lot of respect for the origins and where these people came from and what the world means to everyone. Because we all want the worlds to mesh together. Like if I was going to see a show about Qui-Gon, I would want it not to defy expectations. I would want it to fulfill expectations that were set up by his appearance in the prequel. Same thing with Darth Maul. I would want it to fulfill why he's such a threatening character when we finally meet him or see him fight at the end of episode 1. Notice none of us said Dooku. Isn't that interesting? Nobody wants to see a show about Dooku, which is interesting, from episode 2. But I would love to see that and see it expanded on. Let's see the training of Qui-Gon. Was he not trained by Dooku? Am I correct? Who trained Qui-Gon, Carlos? Do you remember? I think it was. Audio.
Oh, sorry. I think it was Dooku.
It was Dooku. Yes. But let's see the young idealistic Qui-Gon, who arguably is the Boy Scout mentor, the Scoutmaster, so to speak. And then, everyone wants to see Obi-Wan in the desert watching over Luke as Luke's a young boy, and what about the skirmishes of Sand People that he had to fight off to protect Luke during those years as Luke was maturing from baby to teenager?
Or what about his adventures when he was much younger? I mean, we saw him at Ewan McGregor's age. But by the time we see him as Ewan McGregor, he was already a master.
Yep. And I don't know about you guys, but I'd really like to see more about what happened to the Jedi after episode 6. Like, there's got to be
Why are they so hard to find now?
When
we get to Rey, and they're like mythological. She's the last Jedi. Well, where'd the rest of them go? There's got to, and we see this little bit of snippet. And there's another one, by the way. We see this little snippet where this boy comes out of the tavern and with the broom. Yeah. Obviously he's got some talent. Yeah. What happens to him?
Yeah, exactly. What happens to him?
And so obviously all of the Jedis are not gone because they went into hiding. Something happened to most of them, and the rest of them just kind of went underground. What's the whole deal?
What's the deal? And let's expand on that, and let's also expand on the fact that the Skywalkers have a particular gift for wielding the Force. And that's why our stories so far have centered around them. But there are other players in the Force too, and arguably we need to see that. We need to see more people besides Skywalkers, even though they were the spine of the original storytelling.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a couple of little bastard Skywalkers walking around from Luke.
Yeah, Luke
that would-
and Mara Jade's kids. You know what? They'd be pretty gifted if Luke is the master that we all see him as.
I mean, come on. I mean, he comes across as kind of monkish, but come on.
Nah.
He
No,
was a young man. I'm sure as a young man he went out and sowed a few wild oats, and then later on he kind of went into this monkish hermitage up on the mountain.
I think the young kid we saw grow up and become a Jedi Knight. He didn't go right from there into an aesthetic monk living on an island by himself. There's a lot of
time difference. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that happened, and
there might be a few more Skywalkers running around.
There's some Skywalkers out there, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with just like the Pendragon name in the Arthurian mythology.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that there's something special about the Pendragons. There's something special about the Skywalkers. It doesn't mean that everybody else is below them. It just means there's something about their ability to wield the Force that makes them extremely interesting and gifted. There's tons of other cool characters. I mean, what about Han, right? You telling me Han didn't dilly-dally around, perhaps have some affairs when he was separated from Leia? The
only thing about Han is that he didn't have any of the Force, but then neither does Mando. So
exactly,
it doesn't always have to be about the Force. It can be people around them that have the Force, like Grogu.
Right, like Grogu.
Mm-hmm. I think more importantly than having the Force is the general aesthetic of the entire franchise, which is rising above and defeating evil.
Yes.
Even rising above your own shortcomings, like Solo did not want to be a hero.
Right.
He was dead set on becoming a hero, and he just couldn't help himself.
Couldn't help himself. So the journey of Han Solo, let's explore that a little bit. Where do you see?
Oh, and there he goes again. Oh,
Am I back? Am I back?
And he's back.
And I'm back. His growth from a cynical to rebel hero, true for you?
I think that reflects also on the current Mandalorian series, where we have.
There I am back.
Yeah, where we have the cynical, kind of jaded, seen everything, seen a lot of bad things. Has a very sketchy ethical background, and maybe is kind of disgusted with themselves because of it. And the same with Mandalorian. I mean, he never asks any questions. He just carries out his orders. You kill this person, there. Yep. Don't ask why. Just kill him.
Yep.
And sooner or later, you got to be kind of questioning: is this really my life? Isn't there a better purpose, a higher purpose to my life? Is this all I'm ever going to be? And I think that the Rebel Alliance gave Solo something to give him purpose. And Grogu gave Mando a purpose, and it, as you said, it's a redemption arc. I think it's a redemption arc for both of them, because they have a chance to become a better person, to feel better about themselves, and to find a higher purpose for their life besides just all the blood and guts and sadness and scum of the earth type of thing. Because pretty soon you realize that you're scum of the earth too.
Yeah, and that's that's what brought me to one of my favorite moments in the script for The Force Awakens, is when the elder Han Solo is turning to the younger characters and he says, Luke, the Force, it's all true. And that was a brilliant way to reinforce what came before, show the respect to what came before, but also show us that as a skeptic and a cynic, even though we assumed based on how Han Solo was introduced again in episode 7, oh gosh, he's fallen back into his smuggler ways, even in light of that and the seeming fall of Han Solo again, he recognizes that no, it all happened. It's not mythology, and it's true. And the tragedy that separated him from his friend Luke is the reason we're telling the story we're telling. And you can see that, it's a brilliantly acted scene, a brilliantly written scene. You can see that something's obviously happened between Luke and Han. We find out later what that is. But that Luke was the Boy Scout that Han could never really be. So there's an admiration there. There's a growth there. Like, yeah, I was the cool guy and who had the hot rod and got all the chicks, and you were the whiny punk, but you're truly the hero.
Very vaguely, that also reminds me of Captain America and Tony Stark.
Yes.
Tony Stark is a very cynical, and Captain America is like, oh gosh, shucks, and we got to do this because it's the right way. And and Tony's like, oh my God,
mm-hmm.
He's such a cynic, and yet he can't help himself.
Yes.
But to do the right thing.
Yes.
Even though he's still cynical, he wants to be a better person, and he looks up to Captain America, even though he makes fun of Captain America for being such a boring, white bread, idealistic man-child with old-fashioned values, and he just rolls his eyes at that. Secretly, he admires that, and he strives to prove himself to Cap constantly that he's worthy of respect as well.
Yes. Again, this is going to bring something around full circle. There's a similar relationship between Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because Bruce gets his hands dirty, and Bruce has a lot of unresolved anger and issues, obviously, and wants to do the right thing, but it annoys him to no end that Clark has this Boy Scout attitude about doing what's right because it's what's right. And yet there's a part of Bruce that wishes he could be more like Clark, just like there's a part of Tony that wishes he could be more like Steve.
Wishes he could recapture the idealism of his youth.
And that's, I think this will hopefully help some creators who are struggling with writing Boy Scout characters. I've been told by so many creators over casual dinners and drinks and so on, oh, Dean, you can't write those characters anymore. They don't resonate. Nobody likes them. Nobody can write them anymore. They come off corny. It doesn't work. Actually, I disagree with that. You can. It's just harder. It's more challenging. To write Superman now would be a great challenge for an aspiring writer. To write a Superman-like character now would be a great challenge for somebody who wants to explore what it's like to be a Boy Scout in a cynical world.
Yeah, the world that we are living in now, you can't be naive.
Right.
There is no naivete left in the world today. However, you can make a conscious choice to do the right thing, despite all the odds against you. You can say, and I was raised this way. You got to understand, Iowa farm girl. My father was like, a handshake is a deal,
Yeah.
His word is his bond. That sort of upbringing. So, and I try to pass that on to my kids, but it's very, very hard to live that type of ethical life these days. Where you put value on a work ethic and your word and honesty and integrity, stuff like that. And it's a conscious choice every single day to live that kind of life. And if you could write it like that, it works because it's still there. I mean, people out there are still like that, but they're not blind. They're not blind to black and white, and they're not blind to the gray areas either.
Correct.
But they are choosing, despite the gray areas, and it can be very, very difficult. They're choosing to hold to more old-fashioned values.
And I think that is a challenge today, and I would love to see writers who are aspiring and who want to create comic book characters who are similar to Captain America and similar to Superman. You can do it, like you said, if you write them as aware that the world is a complex place filled with gray, and how to choose to do the right thing, even if it means your detriment. What would Cap do, right? It's like, okay, there's a wallet on the ground with $500 in it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the elderly woman walking 100 feet away with her purse hanging half open, right? So those of us raised with a certain set of virtues know what to do. Some people don't have the benefit of the virtues we were raised with. Some people choose to walk away from those virtues.
Everybody else is doing it. I might as well too.
Yeah,
That's
I might as well take the 500 and run, right?
Yeah. Now,
So,
and every time you think that no longer exists in the world, something pops up to remind you that it does. Just tonight on the local news,
okay.
a few days ago, there was a hit and run in Madison here, and somebody was killed, and the young man eventually turned himself in, and it was because his mother said, "I did not raise you to run away from something this. You need to turn yourself in and do your time." And he did. And then she said, and then they interviewed her, and she said, "I tried to raise my son right. And what he did was wrong. And I told him that that I didn't raise him that way, that he needed to turn himself in. And I plan on going to the spot and laying flowers for that poor family because I can't imagine that my son caused this much distress." And I was like, oh my God, there's some of those people left.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's encouraging. And hearing those stories, and maybe that'll encourage people who want to create and who want to tell stories to not be afraid, put some characters that have virtue in them. And let's do that. We've had anti-heroes now since 1986, right? With the Dark Knight Returns, right?
Deadpool.
I mean, how many anti-heroes can we do? I mean, I started noticing anti-heroes since way back with The Man with No Name, and then Snake Plissken in Escape from New York, and then, it just kept going. But in the world of comics, really, The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and then we deconstructed heroes for the next 35 years, right? So it's just too easy. Let's maybe, just maybe, step into the world of, what if we tried to create Boy Scouts again, but smarter Boy Scouts, right?
Or more realistic.
More realistic, right?
Yeah.
Nothing
And
wrong with that.
The whole anti-hero thing is going down so far down the path. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore Derek Robertson.
Sure.
I used to be an inker for his pencils. But oh my God, The Boys. Oh, the Amazon show, The Boys. Talk about anti-heroes. They're just everything that heroes should not be.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I've seen enough of that, because I've been seeing it since Frank Miller and Alan Moore in the late 80s. So I'm kind of like, Okay, guys, isn't it harder to write Superman now? I know it's harder, but you can do it. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. Well, how are we doing on time, Mr. Producer? Are we about to wrap up, or are we still got some time? Again, I want to thank Barb for being here tonight. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening and supporting Silverline. Our sponsors, again, Daytona Comic Book Convention, and also History Camp from History List. I want to give a shout out to Carlos for being a great producer and being patient
And
with
jumping
us.
in.
Did a
Jumping
good
in
job.
and talking.
When we have man cave interruptions to our to our links here, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in and enjoyed it.
Thank you. I think that's it.
Are we out?
Oh, stretch it.
Yeah, do we have the band that we can do the make Silverline?
Oh, I do. All right, everybody. All right.
We'll sign off the right way.
Yep.
Yep. Here we go. Make
Mine Silverline.
Silverline.